Hey everybody, this is herculespetix, founder, curator, docent, and gift shop employee of the herculespetix Academy of Comic Book Studies. Tonight, we're going to be looking at Michael Chabon presents The Amazing Adventures of the Escapist, number 7 and number 8. So I explained this in the first episode. They release these almost concurrently in two different formats. These like single issue, kind of prestige format, normal comic size editions. And there was eight issues. They also, maybe a month later or at the same time, they collected each two issues, 1 and 2, 3 and 4, 5 and 6, in little trade paperback editions, kind of appealing more to the book market that would know Michael Chabon's name. I have those, and I've looked at the first 3, but they stopped after 3. So the only way to get the last stories from this, Chaboniverse is to have these number 7 and number 8. So that's why it's a different format. And instead of volume 1 through 3, it's now number 7 and 8. I guess this would have been, volume 4 if they ever made it. More great stuff. And let's check it out. So here's number 7. Beautiful Brian Bolland cover. Pretty much every time there's a Brian Bolland cover, it's great. I don't know if that guy's ever made a bad cover in his life. And I like this, how they scrawl out Mr. Machine Gun over the Escapist, because it's a very special issue. It's the only non-anthology issue in this series. It's an 80-page story all about Mr. Machine Gun, who is one of the Escapist's enemies, in his rogues gallery. And it's a really good story. And even more exciting, it's Michael Chabon actually wrote the whole comic. Other than a few comics in this series, he never really wrote comics. Even though he obviously loves comics. If you've ever read his novel, The Amazing Adventures of Cavalier and Clay, he knows his shit. And he obviously is a fan. But he's a serious novelist, he wins Pulitzers or however you want to pronounce it. So here we have the contents page. Very nice graphic design. I really like this very simple, stark graphic design here. So the artist on this is Eduardo Barreto, the Uruguayan cartoonist. As far as I know, he came up in the 90s, at least in America. Maybe he was drawing in Uruguay for decades. And he has a very classic style. I gotta be honest, never been that much a fan of Eduardo Barreto, but I definitely am a little bit more of a fan. Well, I'm not a fan, but I appreciate him a little bit more after this. There's some panels in here that are very classic, very almost like Joe Kubert, almost like Jose Luis Garcia Lopez, but it's not that consistent. So there's definitely panels in here where I'm like, okay, yeah, this guy's not my favorite. But there's some panels where I'm like, this guy's really good. He's got that very classic style, which is weird that we never saw him before the 90s, I think. As far as I'm pretty sure he didn't have much American comics. So we start off the comic. We see this guy, Ben. And he's the scion of an industrial fortune. His father here, he is the, CEO, owner of a very world-famous gun manufacturer. So he's growing up in the lap of luxury, and he's out with his dad, and they're hunting. Father shoots a bird. His faithful dog goes to retrieve it. And it's kind of an interesting conflict. So it turns out Ben is now a senator. He's a senator, and he married a woman who is very anti-gun. She's pretty liberal, and she's, kind of convinced him. He's now trying to pass a bill to ban the .38 special. This is like a real world thing, because the .38 special is just made for killing. You can't really hunt with the .38 special. It's just a murdering weapon. So he just wants to ban that. That's all he's saying. He's not asking for take people's guns or anything. Of course, his father has got the hardcore NRA stance, like, oh, it's a slippery slope. I can't support you on this. Banning any gun leads to, the liberals want to take all our guns. So they're having this debate about it. And Ben grabs his hunting rifle and aims it at his faithful dog to make a point. It's like, hey, how funny would it be for you to watch me kill this dumb animal? And the father was just like, no, please. And right then, the butler runs up. And he says, Mr. Ben, there was a phone call. Your wife's nurse, because his nurse has cancer. She just shot herself with a gun. She killed herself using a pistol. I'm pretty sure by pistol made by his father. So it's a very interesting conflict set up here. It's called Arms and the Man I Sing. That's the name of this whole kind of graphic novel. It's 80 pages. 2 days later, we're at the funeral. A lot of people at the funeral mention, like, how good Ben looks for his age. We'll find out why later. So Ben is chatting with Charlie Burns. Charlie Burns is the master armorer of Vanderslice Guns and Rifle Company. That's the company. He, kind of like almost a second father to Ben. Ben grew up with him. And he's a kind of a nice, sweet, wise man. And he's consoling him. See, this is the kind of panels here where I'm just like, I just love that. Like, classic good drawing. But then, like, I don't know, some of these faces aren't that great. I'm like, eh. So, the whole time we've kind of noticed that Ben has this weird, almost misshapen hand with a glove around it. The reason why he takes it off, he's got this weird mechanical hand. And it turns out that this hand can turn itself into a gun. This is why he's Mr. Machine Gun. He points at his head, says, maybe I should test it out. I mean, he's lost everything, Charlie's like, no! Grabs the gun out of his, away from his forehead. Apparently this gun is like the super ahead of its time technology. It even has a suicide switch. We realize that it's made by some guy named Dr. Speckler, some kind of genius. It has a suicide switch so he can't kill himself. And, sorry, I've already forgotten his name. Charlie says, hey, did you ever miss the old days? And he says, no, I was a killer. I was a murderer. That's what guns do. So he's really changed. And now we see it's midnight in Cleveland Park. We see this gay couple. They're walking out, going home, and this gang shows up of young toughs, and they're homophobes. And they're basically like, we're going to kick your ass for being gay. One of them tries to fight back. They just beat the shit out of him. And right then, Mr. Machine Gun shows up. This is like the first time in years. And he just beats the crap out of him. The gang guys run away. And we realize that this gun, it's almost like Elric Stormbringer. It influences him. It's basically like talking to him. It's like, you should have shot those guys. You should have murdered them. I'm hungry for blood. You can't just like wound these guys and shoot their thumbs off. I want you to kill them. It's like, no, I can't be that guy. So very Elric-y, And he gives in, and he actually does blow away a lot of the guys. The gun, we realize, is just like, yeah, kill those gay guys too. He doesn't care. I mean, his gun really just wants blood. Even though Mr. Machine Gun pretty much is a vigilante who just kills bad guys. But he has to fight the urge to shoot these innocent men. So he's back at home. And he tells Charlie shows up. You know, Charlie lives in, I think, in the mansion. He's all like, I had the weirdest dream last night. But there's a headline in the newspaper that's like, Mr. Machine Gun's back. I guess someone took a picture of him. There's a whole story about him killing that gang, wounding and killing. Turns out it wasn't just his dream. So he's totally not in control. So now, as a senator, you know, that's his job. He's meeting with, like, the head of the NRA. And basically the head of the NRA says, you know, he threatens him. He's like, we can take you down easily. We got enough lobbying money where we can have 10,000 articles tomorrow in every newspaper talking about how you're this anti-gun fanatic. We can easily defeat your handgun bill. And he mentions, too, that the father, you know, that opening scene, he is totally against his son now because he tried to shoot his dog. And he has a lot of clout. He's the head of one of the biggest arms manufacturers in America. So once again, the gun is kind of coaxing him to become Mr. Machine Gun again. So he's out one night. There's an old black guy out. He's walking home from work. He's a little worried because it's a bad part of town. And these 3 black gang members show up. And they're going to mug him. So, you know, he plays the vigilante. Beats them up. And once again, the gun says, no, don't just knock him out. Shoot him. Shoot him. And he does. He gives in. They're totally defeated. They're on the ground. He kills them in cold blood. And the old black man who we just rescued says, I remember you. You're the one who killed all those, you know, Nazis and Japanese guys in the war. So what? Now you declare war on the black man? So even though he saved his life, he's also just like, oh, you're just going to kill black guys in the street? Of course, the gun wants him to shoot that old black man. Totally innocent guy. And now we cut away to this reporter, this old reporter. And this guy has been following Mr. Machine Gun his whole career. I mean, I think it started in like the 40s. Because remember, he's way older than he looks. His daughter is a reporter too, so he meets his daughter. And she's kind of pressing him for information. She's like, okay, I got to do a story on this. Mr. Machine Gun is back. Tell me what you know. It seems like her father, almost every story about Mr. Machine Gun was written by him. So she's like, you got some connection to him. You knew him, didn't you? And turns out he did. He never told his daughter about any of this before. So now we see a nice flashback. I love this. How very golden age looking comic strip style here. It even says Cavalier and Clay here, as if they wrote it and drew it. But it's still a weirdo burrito, which that guy kind of does draw in a very retro style anyway. So he says, how did I meet Ben Vanderslice? That's his name. 1941, he was on a ship. They were heading to Germany. He was there to cut a deal with some arms manufacturer. But, of course, the reporter was there to get the dope on, what's going on him. Also, what adding to the tension of it is they're heading to Nazi Germany, 1941, and the reporter's Jewish. But he's also a very good reporter, so he's fearless. So he actually does get to meet Ben. And gets a little inside scoop on him. So they land in Germany. Yeah, some of the stuff even looks like Gene Colan or something. Like he just has a very... I don't know where he gets it from, but maybe he just grew up reading American comics from like the 50s and 60s and 70s. But Eduardo Barreto has a very like old school style. So now we see Ben. He's at a meeting with the Nazis, this Nazi gun manufacturer, like kind of implying that, oh, maybe we can help each other out. But really, he's working for the OSS. And he's there. The Germans don't trust him right off the bat. They're like, this guy's up to something. And here's where we meet Speckler, the guy he mentioned earlier about making his hand. So after everyone goes to sleep, Ben now gets out of his room and he starts spying around. He is looking for blueprints. And the guy who owns the mansion, the owner of this German arms manufacturer, he catches him. And because basically these blueprints are for Dr. Speckler's research into neurotomics, which has I don't know what it is, but we'll find out. So the German six his goons on him, and Ben's pretty good with his fisticuffs, and he fights a lot of them off. But eventually they capture him, they subdue him. And he says, I'm going to treat you like, for centuries, how thieves have been treated. We're going to chop off your hand. But Speckler says, wait, don't waste this great opportunity. I've been wanting to try out my neurotomics, my theories, on a real subject. Let me use them. So he chops off his hand and puts in that artificial hand / machine gun. And here we see it for the first time. It's got a failsafe in it, so he can't shoot Speckler. He tries to. And I like how the flashback art is even more raw than Eduardo Barreto already is. So it's like, yeah, it's a pretty good facsimile of a Golden Age comic. So they do all these tests on the gun. But eventually, Speckler didn't realize this. This is technology almost beyond him. It's so advanced that he couldn't predict this. But there's a bond between the gun and the user. Just like as we saw later in time, it actually talks to him. So he overcomes the override, if you will, and makes his escape. He starts mowing down these Nazis, which shouldn't have been able to happen. And he kicks down the door where Speckler's hanging out with the high command. Starts killing everyone. And he says, take me to Hitler right now. All the Nazis are like, we can't do that. I mean, we'd rather let you kill us. So then he grabs Speckler and he says, take out that override or I'll kill you. Which he does. He's got a gun to his head. Speckler's got no choice. And he says, you're no longer a man anymore. You're a monster, Vanderslice. Because you can't die on your own terms anymore. He grabs the gun and he shoots himself. He blows his brains out. Which I gotta say, begs to reason that if he didn't care about dying, why did he do this? You know, cut the wires. So, Ben escapes his castle, this Nazi castle, and he makes his way to Berlin, where he goes to the embassy and comes back to America. So he's chatting with the reporter after that, and after all his work, the reporter can't use the story. It's just too sensitive. So, at the very least, though, he kind of negotiated. He's like, okay, I'm not going to release the story of his origin, but you got to give me first dibs on all the story. So, Mr. Machine Gun becomes an operative in World War II for the Allies. And he's a great hero. He, smashes Nazis all throughout Europe, smashes spy rings. And Bernie Schwartz is there for every story. He gets the byline. Of course, it always seems like he's getting out of control, or sometimes he just massacres like 700 guys in 30 seconds. It's starting to take its toll. So he goes to India. He kind of meditates for 5 years, kind of goes to a Buddhist temple. When he comes back to America, he's a changed man. He marries that woman, who at the beginning we saw had died of cancer, killed herself. And he becomes a senator. I gotta say, I'm not gonna read all the dialogue, but it's really well written. All the dialogue's great. The characters are good. Characterization, even just the Bernie Schwartz, the old reporter, and his daughter. The dialogue between them's very good. So the daughter now, with this ammunition, this knowledge, she's like, okay, I'm going to interview Ben Vanderslice. And he grants the interview because he realizes it's Bernie's daughter. And she admits, she says, I know you're Mr. Machine Gun. I know you shot those kids. So they have this long talk. And also, throughout this talk, it seems like he's kind of taken with her. I mean, she is, Eduardo Barreto draws her very beautifully. I can understand why. He even asked her on a date. So they're on their date, and I guess hasn't been sleeping, because, he's Mr. Machine Gun. Every night he goes out killing people. And so he's so tired. He falls asleep on their date, and she has to drag him to a taxi. I don't know if this is Plum, Escapist assistant, or just a random Asian woman, but I think that's a little cameo there. So she takes him to his home, and basically she's already just like, yeah, I kind of like this guy. I'm going to make sure he's okay. He's talking in his sleep. Really, he's talking to his hand in his sleep. And she's curious, and she sees him get up as if he's in a daze, turn into Mr. Machine Gun, put on this little outfit. And then he's a totally different person. He's Mr. Machine Gun. He's all like a dandy. He's like, care for a ride, my lady? And he goes out with her, and she's like, what? I'm going to have to watch you kill people? Is this what you do? You just drive around until you see some malfeasance, and then you kill everyone? It's like, yeah, pretty much. So they're driving around, and they do see these toughs fucking with this old guy. And, of course, he shows up. And when he's going to shoot a bunch of them. And Bernie's daughter, she actually shoves the gun aside. She stops him from doing it. He did wound him anyway. And she's just like, what the hell did you do? And strangely enough, by total coincidence, that lobbyist for the NRA happens to be on the street. He says, oh, how hypocritical. You want to take everyone's guns, but you're Mr. Machine Gun who goes out every night killing people with your guns. Of course, the gun just starts really saying, kill him. All your problems will go away if you kill him. He's going to ruin everything. He's going to expose you. And while you're at it, kill her, because she's a witness. He's like, kill them both. And of course, Mr. Machine Gun's very torn. And then finally, he just turns the gun on himself and blows his brains out. Apparently, it didn't work. He didn't quite blow his brains out. So he ends up in a hospital here. I think he's just blasted off half his face. And for the first time in years, Ben Schwartz shows up, the old reporter. And they haven't seen each other in years. I guess they kind of had a falling out, whatever. And then his father shows up. And he says, there's not going to be any story. He tells the reporters, he's like, I've already paid the money. I've already covered all this up. No charges have been brought. I paid off everyone. He's not grateful. He's like, get out of here, old man. And basically it's him with Charlie, his surrogate dad, left alone with him. And Charlie, is pro Mr. Machine Gun. He's just like, you did a lot of good. It's not such a bad thing. And as Charlie leaves, he's left contemplating. We don't know what he's going to do. He's going to continue to be Mr. Machine Gun. We don't know. But it's a very interesting dilemma he's in. I kind of like this, how he dedicates it to Russ Manning at the end. He says to Russ Manning as he signs his name. Here's the creator bios. So here's Eduardo Barreto. He doesn't look that old. He was born in 54. So he is like of an older era. But still, the fact that he draws so classic, He doesn't draw like, Howard Chaykin was born around then. Jim Starlin, all those other 70s guys. But it's almost like he ignored 20 years of comics. It's just like, I'm drawing like, whatever, Alex Raymond and Milton Caniff. Here's Michael Chabon. And we have a next issue blurb. And, Okay, this is what I'm talking about. Just this cover alone. I've never seen Eduardo Barreto draw this well. This is beautiful. I didn't think it was him. I was like, who is this? This is great. Who's this amazing artist? It's him. This is gorgeous. If every page and panel looked like this, yeah, I'd be a huge fan too. So now we have number 8, the final issue. Another Brian Mullen cover. Really great cover. I just love everything about this hot Nazi lady capturing the escapist. So, the same graphic design for the contents page. And we start off with the first chapter of The Escapists by Brian K. Vaughan, writer, and Philip Bond, the great English cartoonist, drawing. And this is total, like, comic book nerd shit. Basically, we see this kid. Well, he's, a young man. And his dad has just died. I'm sorry, his mom has just died. But he has a flashback to when he was a teenager, when his dad was killed. And his mom said, your father left you this, and it's a golden key. It's the key to the basement. And the kid says, Dad never said I could go down there. She's like, it's all right now. You can check it out. I really like Philip Bond stuff. Even though everyone kind of looks like, I don't know, it's kind of cartoony. Their heads are a little too big for their bodies, and their eyes are a little too big for the face. So he goes into the basement for the first time in his life. Turns out his father is this crazy escapist fan, beyond fan. He's got all this crazy memorabilia. He had no idea. His father never talked about it. And the main treasure, even though there's dolls and posters, he finds the comic box, and it's got every single escapist in it. And at this young age, he becomes a huge Escapist fan. We see a little flashback art from an issue, which is, the cover. We see that hot Nazi lady. And this is drawn by Eduardo Barreto. They got him to do the flashback stuff. Because Philip Bond, I don't think he could ever mask his style. That he's not a golden age cartoonist by any means. He couldn't fool anyone. So it's like a typical Escapist adventure. This Nazi lady, I can't remember her name, but and this is interesting, almost like the thing that Chris Ware would do in his early comics, where you can see this comic, right? This is a golden age comic, but the panels are just our protagonist narrating stuff about Cavalier and Clay and the Escapist. So, we see these action panels, and the Escapist is saying, my father had an almost complete run of the original series of the Escapist, yada, yada, yada. So, kind of an interesting narrative technique where he's just narrating this instead of having his captions. It's word balloons, which is something Chris Ware did in some of his earlier comics. So he grows up becoming a Escapist fanatic. This comic that, is totally dead and old. He's a total nerd, so we see him in high school getting picked on all the time. And then one day, this huge guy shows up, and he basically says, fuck off, guys. You keep picking on this guy, I'm going to beat the shit out of you. And he's like, wow, you didn't have to do that. And the kid says, Nazis blew off my grandfather's leg. I hate Nazis. And they become fast friends. So he's still a nerd, but at least he has a really good friend. So after his mom died, he got like a trust fund. He got this massive life insurance policy. It's like $150,000. What does he do? He doesn't buy a house. He actually buys the rights to The Escapist. I mean, before that, he's just like an elevator repairman. And one day while he's working, someone's stuck in the elevator, so they call him in. Turns out it's this woman here. And he's instantly amazed by her. Turns out she's a cartoonist. She's a graphic designer / cartoonist. And she drops her card or something, So he's got a number. And I'm sorry, guys, right here. This is where the mom dies. He comes home. And I love this quote by Oscar Wilde. To lose one parent may be regarded as misfortune. To lose both looks like carelessness. So he's at the mom's funeral. And his buddy shows up. And that's what he tells him, that he bought the rights to The Escapist. He's already printed up business cards. So he knows that girl's address. He approaches her. He says, hey, I need you to draw this comic book for me. I want to hire you. She's like, I'm not really into superheroes. I like stuff like 8-Ball and Love and Rockets. There's a lot of references to like real world comic stuff in here, mentioning comic writers and artists. It's a very geeky comic. So he convinces her to draw it. And he says, I've got a surefire way to promote it. So, it won't just be lost in the sea of all the titles that come out every day. And he gets his buddy, the big muscular guy, to dress up as The Escapist. Kind of a promotional thing. And it's to be continued. So, this is the last issue of this comic. This was reprinted and continued in a whole miniseries from Dark Horse by the same team called The Escapists. So, it's really good. And one day, I don't know, not soon, because I just looked at this, but one day soon I'll look at that comic. And there's just a little taste of it. So here's letter pages, which we've never seen before, because those trade paperbacks didn't do the letter pages. And now we have the weirdest, this is maybe the weirdest thing that's been in this comic. It's a Harvey Pekar story, drawn by Gene Haspel, a longtime Pekar collaborator. And it's pretty much a Harvey Pekar comic, talking about dealing with his chemo and just, all his problems, just like an American Splendor comic. And then the Escapist shows up. And of course, Harvey Pekar's like, what the fuck is going on here? Can I just say, I think last issue or last episode or 2 episodes ago, I talked about like, wow, this is some of the nicest Gene Haspel art I've ever seen. Now I remember why I don't like him so much. Like, look at the skull on Harvey Pekar here. He actually looks like a Kirby character, like a weird mutant or something. There's a lot of like weird... Harvey Pekar does not look like that. I know he's a weird looking guy, but he doesn't have a skull that misshapen. So this just goes on. It's so bizarre. It's a typical Harvey Pekar story, but with this weird, slight connection to The Escapist just by having him show up and chat with Harvey Pekar. So weird. I kind of love it, though. I kind of love the idea that they're like, we could have any kind of story in this anthology. Even if it's a Harvey Pekar autobio, we'll still somehow connect it to The Escapist. It just goes on and on like this. Harvey Pekar talking about his life, talking about his American Splendor comic and his success and the movie. And basically, he's just chatting with The Escapist. He's telling this all to him. So it's a very cursory connection to the Escapist title. I don't know what's going on there. I don't really like it. And then the Escapist just poofs away. And that's it. So fucking weird. It's bizarre. So now we have Powder Burns. This is Andy Watson, who I have disparaged in this channel before. Not a fan of his stuff at all. I gotta say, I think this art is outstanding. I love it. Still, the guy can't write very well. So this is a war comic, basically, about back in World War II in the Escapist. You know, he served some time. And this new recruit shows up to a troop or a platoon or whatever you call it. I think this is really nice cartooning. Just that panel right there. That's great stuff. Very stylized. But just, I don't know, there's nothing of interest here, story-wise. As far as I'm concerned. Maybe, I'm sure some people might like it. I just love panels like this with all these trees. I might be forgetting, but I don't even know if the Escapist even shows up in this comic. I forgot. I read it last night. But I really dig this, the way it looks. Almost, well, it's not like Paul Grist, but it's like Paul Grist times 4 or 10. Well, I guess that's the one connection. There's a Escapist comic book. Now, we have more Paul Hornschweimer, if I'm saying that right. More Escape Knot comics. And this is very much like a Mark Newgarden page from, like, I don't know, an old issue of Snake Eyes or Raw. Where it's all these little goofy comics about the Escape Knot. Even, look at this, this is very Mark Newgarden. With this typical gag panel, but with this huge caption. To be honest, I didn't really like any of these. I love the idea. I love this kind of shit. But, I don't know. None of them are that funny. So now we have one of those little fake articles about the Escapist, how he had big little books made about him. Of course he did. He was kind of a big thing. But I guess this is a comic supposedly based on a big little book plot. And this is written and drawn by Jeff Parker. I don't know much about Jeff Parker. I know he did like lots of high-profile stuff for Marvel. I think maybe DC. This is called The Escapist at the Royal Festival of Magic. And the little I do know of Jeff Parker after reading the story, I don't like the way he plots a story. There's just some random events kind of strewn together. So I guess there's this big festival of magic. And the Escapist decides to go. Of course, he has a mission, too. It's all part of, he has to stop this this Iron Chain faction called the Shackle. And they're involved with slavery and all this other stuff. So he shows up. Yeah. I mean, see stuff like this, I'm not a fan. It's not the worst shit I've ever seen, but I don't know. I think I'm not a Jeff Parker fan after reading this. We see all these other rival magicians. Here's one guy who does the old sawing a lady in half thing. He doesn't use the cabinet. He just chops them in half right in front of you. But then he brings them back miraculously. But as the Escapist is watching the act, he says, "That's not the same woman." The cops are called. Apparently this guy's been killing women for years as part of his act. And they're just having a woman who kind of looks like her pop up. Like, oh, look, no harm, no foul. So just these weird little mini stories within this, like asides. Like that could be a 8-page story right there. It's got like a little twist ending, all that shit. But no, it just keeps going from a little anecdote about these various magicians. Once again, some of these panels I think are pretty damn good. And then some are just like, oh, I don't like that. But like, Plum's face there, it looks great. I gotta say, I don't know what it is. I know this is very silly. This is why I'm not a professional comic reviewer. I'm just a chucklehead. But I fucking love this. I don't know why. This weirdly cartoony tiger he draws, the way he colors it, it's kind of almost like some old like Japanese art from the 1700s. It really is like, I wasn't thrilled by anything else in this comic, but I was like, oh, I like that a lot. That's great. Once again, just another little anecdote. The story doesn't really seem to have any propulsion. There's just all these random little vignettes about these other magicians. Like almost mini stories in 2 pages. Which could be really good. But, I don't know, I don't think he's that great a writer. And none of the stories were that interesting. So sorry guys, I'm not reviewing this comic very well. To be honest, I just don't care. I don't really want to spend the time to really get into the nitty gritty of this comic. Most of the art really bothers me. Here's 2 pages where I don't like anything. I don't like that. I don't like that. But there's a couple panels that I kind of like. So finally at the end, of course, the Escapist takes down the shackle, the iron chain offshoot, using all the circus animals and the circus performers. We get to see that tiger again. And that's the end. We have more creator bios, just like every issue. And we have a coming attraction. I guess it was going to have another Brian Bolland cover, number 9. It never came out. It was going to have another Howard Chaykin written story. It was going to have Phil Winslade draw. This sounds fascinating. Gonzo journalism and 70s relevant comics. And part 2 of the Escapist series by Brian K. Vaughan. At least we get this great Brian Bolland cover. Most of it. So that's nice. But it was not to be. Photo back cover of Michael Chabon and Diana Schutz winning the Eisner Awards for this anthology. And that's it for number 7 and 8 of Michael Chabon Presents The Amazing Adventures of the Escapist. So, thanks for bearing with me, guys. That was 4 episodes in a row, the same title. I hope you weren't too bored. And I just think there's a lot of interesting stuff in these comics. It's not always a great story, but the whole artifice, conceit of this comic, I love the whole shtick. That this is some fake character that has a history, and the way they really play along with the gag. So even the worst stories is part of this whole tapestry that's kind of interesting to me, because I'm a nerd, if you haven't noticed yet. So there you go, guys. Hope you enjoyed watching it, and I hope to see you next time here at the herculespetix Academy of Comic Book Studies. Perhaps I'll be sober then. Bye.